So, hello everyone. I'm here, Leo McFarlane, part of Resolution Therapeutics and an advocate. I'm one of the members of the Mental Health Committee. And here I'm recording my first, or our first, recording on a topic called Imposter Syndrome. And here I have my amazing guest, Dawn Barnes, consultant on the area when it comes to industry and when it comes to managerial side of things as well, when it comes to the mindfulness aspect, when it comes to imposter syndrome. So welcome, Dawn Barnes.
Thank you.
Welcome, Dawn, I should say.
Thanks so much
to
for having
245
me.
Hammersmith.
Yeah, really
How are you doing
pleased
today?
to be here. Yeah, really pleased to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Excellent.
In your lovely offices.
Thank you very much. So today, the topic of imposter syndrome is something that many of us don't actually know what it is. And on top of that, many of us have actually had to delve with the feelings of imposter syndrome. A lot of us have had to really dig in deep. We've seen other colleagues be a part of it. With Resolution Therapeutics being an industrial science company and being in biotech, we get a lot of individuals who are promoted very quickly. We also get a lot of individuals who have come from academia and essentially they are having to deal with the massive big shift going from academia to industry, such as myself, coming from Imperial. So with that, there's many different feelings when it comes to imposter syndrome. So I guess where we should start is, what is imposter syndrome? Because I think in terms of my understanding, imposter syndrome is where you feel like a fraud, you feel like you don't belong, or you're just unsure of, am I part of this team? Do I gel well? Am I doing what I'm supposed to be doing, or am I good enough? Would you like to elucidate and delve a bit further into it?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Great question to start with, because it is a real thing, imposter syndrome. And it is where it often is found in high achievers. And it's where you've got real self-doubt with your intellect and your competence. And it's where someone worries so much that they're going to be exposed as a fraud or as an imposter. So as literally the name suggests, they don't deserve their success. They feel they've kind of arrived by luck rather than by skill. And if they have any recognition, it's a huge overestimation of their achievements or their success. They almost like don't accept that recognition. They don't feel like they deserve it. And it is a feeling, it's a mindset, but I think it goes deeper than that. And it's about your identity, like who you truly are. So often people will say they have this feeling that they feel a bit out of place, that they don't belong. And that, to me, that's crucial, because it's one of our fundamentals of the human psyche to feel that we belong. And so if that is a bit rocky, then that can be really detrimental to your well-being and your mental health. If we think back to our evolution, we all needed and wanted to be part of the tribe. If you were kicked out or you were left out because you were a bit weak, it was a life or death situation, because the ones that weren't part of the group were eaten by the saber-toothed tiger. But we're not in a life-death situation now. But there's still that feeling that if you don't belong, that's really, really critical.
So essentially, it's kind of like as you said, it goes back before time. It's kind of it's the tribe mentality, right? The tribe mentality. And I guess when it comes to friendships and understanding that, garnering those connections, it's those bonds and understanding, I do actually belong to something, that really help alleviate imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
So what exactly does it sound like then? Because I've got my understanding of imposter syndrome would be, let's say I've started a new role.
Yeah.
Or, let's go with the idea that I've started a new role. And then I'm in a meeting, I'm overwhelmed with so much information. And I'm just sitting there thinking, am I right for this job? Or am I good enough for this job? Do I know enough? Now, of course, it's in terms of the logical nature behind it. It's irrational, right? Because you've gone through all these steps, which specifically for this job, it's 3 different interviews.
Right.
Of course, if you passed all that, you would be good enough.
Absolutely. But those thoughts and feelings are real. Yeah, you actually sort of, your self-talk is saying, do I deserve this role? Even though you've been offered the role and you're here, you're like, do I deserve it? And it might sound like, when am I going to get found out? And I'm winging it, and I'm going to get found out. I don't deserve my success, or just literally it sounds like I'm a fraud, I'm an imposter. So that I remember feeling like that myself, like, am I going to get found out? So if you are going into your job having those feelings, then you are not going to perform at your best, and you're not going to feel at your best at work. So your job satisfaction is not going to be up here high, it's going to be lower. And as a company, you want your people, you want a happy workforce, but you're not going to get the best out of people if they're not performing, if they're thinking, I don't deserve to be here, oh my gosh, I don't deserve this job, and when am I going to get found out, I'm a fraud, I don't want to be exposed. So it's you're not getting the best out of your people with those feelings, but they are real feelings for people. They're not made up. That's how someone feels. So.
Yeah, and I guess also when it comes to performance in the workplace, the reason why the performance starts to drop when you have all these thoughts and feelings, I'm assuming it takes up a lot of energy.
Yeah, so much mental energy. It's draining. It's mentally draining. It takes up so much mental energy. It can hold people back in all sorts of ways. And it's really overthinking in a negative manner. So yeah, it does have a big impact in the workplace for sure.
And I think most people can resonate with those days where they've woken up. They know that it's a super, super busy week at work. I've had a long period of time at work where the demands, the stress, like even at this current moment right now, we're doing a lot of documentation to make sure that some of our assays, which is experiments in terms of scientific speak, are correct for our filing for a clinical trial. And not to say there was this job, but with other roles that I've had, there have been times where I've woken up and I'm like, oh, I don't feel that great. I don't look forward to actually going into work because I feel that I'm just not good enough for what's actually being, or what we're trying to achieve here. But then by the time you get to work and then you go through the motions, you feel that imposter syndrome, you then realize, you know what, actually I am competent. I know what I'm doing here. So what was the whole, why did my body react in such a way? Why did my mind react in such a way? So are there any other ways that imposter syndrome could sound like? Is it the case where it's a spectrum?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, my view is that everybody feels a bit of imposter syndrome. But there was a report that said, they studied people in the workplace who experienced imposter syndrome. So they came up with a percentage. So what do you think the percentage was? Someone experiencing imposter syndrome in the workplace?
Let's go with 75%.
Well, excellent. It was actually 70%.
Okay.
But my view is I think it's much more than that. I think it's higher. And going back to your question, there is different levels of it. But if you were saying like you felt anxious, stressful at work, but you got to work and you actually, you reframed it and you were able to, like, no, I am deserved to be here and I'm capable and you're competent and you've got the skills to do it. But if you aren't able to do that and you carry that anxiety throughout the day, every week, that can turn to stress, anxious thoughts, going through an anxious thoughts, negative cycle. And if you leave that unmanaged, that can turn to overwhelm and eventually even depression. Depression has been linked to feelings of imposter syndrome. And I have an example of myself. So I've definitely experienced this when before doing employee wellbeing, I was in corporate marketing. And I had this role where I joined a new company and I had a small team that I was managing, and then within a month of joining the company, they restructured and centralised the marketing department. So suddenly I was going from a small team and I was managing this big department, people in different countries, all exciting, but I felt, when am I going to get found out? I'm not capable. I'm not capable as they think I am, or as I say I am. And I felt as if I was going into work and wearing this mask, like I was literally putting on a professional mask to go and do my job, and that was draining, day after day. And I didn't recognise it at the time as imposter syndrome, but looking back, oh my gosh, definitely was. And there's 5 types of imposter syndrome. We'll come on to that later, and I can identify myself as definitely one of those types then. I didn't manage it well, and actually in the end I did suffer from severe work-related stress, turned to depression. I was off work for a year. Yeah, it was a bad time, but it's good to talk about these things because I think that it makes people feel, actually, I have those kind of thoughts. And it's to say you're not alone in that. Not that it helps you overcome them, but in a way it does make you feel a bit more normal that other people experience these types of things. And there is absolutely nothing wrong with you if you have these feelings. It's about recognising it, being aware, this is the first thing, and then coming up with strategies on how to overcome it. But don't do what I did and don't manage it well, and the worst that can happen. But it wasn't just that, but what I'm saying is it's good to talk about things, get it out into the open, and it is quite a common thing, especially with high achieving professionals, intellectual people. It's about competence and self-doubt around those things. So I think particularly with your company, that is why maybe there might be a lot of people experiencing this syndrome. So
and especially in such a high, but yet again, I wouldn't even just say our company, but when it comes to industrial science, it is so fast-paced that sometimes when there's such a massive pivot, you may sit there and think, oh, I don't remember how I did this last time. Will I do this in the correct manner? Can I elevate to the levels that I have done beforehand? I do have a question, actually, as we have been talking about statistics. Is there any data, as scientists, we love our data, right?
Love your data.
Is there any data when it comes to the different genders? Do you get, let's say, with men or women or others, is there a specific gender that has more imposter syndrome, or is more likely to be attributed to the effects of imposter syndrome?
Yeah, there's a lot of work that's been done on imposter syndrome, and a lot of work around women, actually, as well as high achievers as well. It's very common along there, but lots in women. It was the actual term was coined back in the 1970s, where they did a group of studies on professionally accomplished women who constantly felt that they were underachieving and fooling others, and they coined this psychological phenomenon, imposter syndrome. So it comes from there, and then there's been other studies around women feeling imposter syndrome, but it impacts everybody, different ages, male, female. So it's it can touch everybody because it's a mindset thing. So there is a study by Dr. Valerie Young. She did a lot of work on imposter syndrome. So
I'm definitely going to have to tune in, and we'll make sure to read in terms of Valerie Young and all that information, because it's all new news to me. Obviously, as I stated before, I'm aware of imposter syndrome, but knowing all the nooks and crannies and understanding what the data says, where it's been coined from, which is, it's amazing to know that now. But it all does make sense. And I can see why, in terms of such a fast-paced society, why imposter syndrome is there and not too many talk about it. And I think that's why it's so important to have a recording such as what we have today on imposter syndrome, because in terms of the Mental Health Committee, we've touched on quite a few different topics, such as stress management, we've touched on anxiety, and we even got a really interesting one in terms of, we've also touched on work-life balance, but we've also got an interesting topic on sleep as well. So I think these are all important things in terms of our resolutionaries. And yeah, it's so good to have an expert in and actually talking about things such as imposter syndrome, which most of my colleagues, when I've spoke to them, they're like, oh, what's that? So it's definitely going to drum up a lot of intrigue going forwards, which is absolutely amazing.
It's great. The stuff that you're doing that you just said there with the employees is fantastic. Some really like important mental health topics. I think the thing with imposter syndrome, people are maybe fearful or they worry about talking about it. They may not recognise what it is, but because it's about being exposed as a fraud, if they open up, that's exactly what it's doing. I'm going to expose myself that I'm not as good as people think I am. So it's like it's even worse kind of to do that. But
so it's kind of like
this kind of thing will help, I'm sure.
It's like a positive feedback loop where it's just the more that you experience, the more you're like, you know what, I don't need to mention it, sort of thing. But this is again, when it comes to my experience with it, this is where we're open and we're vulnerable about these sort of things, because in order to harness a healthy and well-balanced workplace, these are the sort of things and these are the sort of conversations that need to be had. Yeah, definitely. So definitely very important. So thanks, Dawn, in terms of that. So you mentioned before the 5 different types of imposter syndrome. Now, I didn't know that there were 5 types. Didn't know whatsoever. So I guess this is where we give you the floor in terms of what are the 5 different types and what differs with each type. So let's go through the 5 different types. I think it's useful for people to hear the different types, to maybe think, oh yeah, I resonate with that one, that's me. You might find that you sort of think, oh, I think that's me and another one as well, which is perfectly fine. But let's go through the 5, and then I'll also want to say how to overcome each type as well, because it's a little bit different. So the first one is the perfectionist. So that is someone who likes things just so, and they have very high standards of themselves and others actually, and because of that they set impossible goals. And when they don't reach them, then there's a lot of self-doubt that creeps in. They tend to focus on the negative thing, that like a little mistake that they've made, rather than the positives. So let's give an example. This sounds like it resonates with me a bit.
Say there's a project or a piece of work or a presentation, and you deliver it to your colleagues, and there's a tiny error, mistake. Maybe it's a typo, maybe it's a presentation, you've pronounced someone's name wrong, a little error, and you absolutely hone in on that, worry about it, ruminate it, think about it over and over, and you forget the brilliance of the whole other piece of work that you've done. So that's the downside of a perfectionist. These people, as kind of managers or team leaders, have trouble delegating because they think that they can do a better job themselves. They might not like to hear it, but they can be a bit control freaks, micromanaging. So this is the type of imposter syndrome, is the perfectionist. So to overcome that, and again, there's nothing wrong with all these things. There's nothing wrong with setting high goals and wanting to, have things perfect and do a quality job. So, but you need to give yourself credit where it's due. So rather than focusing on the failures, focus on all the great things that have happened. And see making mistakes as there's nothing bad about them. See failures as lessons. So what I like to say, a bit of a mantra, I guess, is rather than going for 100% perfect, go for really, really good. So we're going for really, really good rather than 100% perfect 100% of the time. Because that's just, it's impossible to achieve. So that's the first type.
So the perfectionist. Would I say that I resonate with the perfectionist? I think there's certain elements of it that I definitely agree with for myself. Whenever there's a little thing, I'm like, and essentially with my partner, it could be an excellent discussion or an excellent side or an excellent episode of the podcast that I produce, but then I could always focus on just that one thing and be like, oh, wait, it wasn't good enough. So I guess, yet again, with the perfectionist, that's on different levels as well. It is a paradigm, I'm assuming.
Yeah, and it's when you say about that, I think that we can all be a bit focusing on what we've done wrong rather than all the great stuff we've done. And it's called a negativity bias. We all have this. It goes back again to the evolution. It's about our brain protecting us from a threat. So
Yes.
we don't want to make a mistake. We don't want to not be part of the tribe. But when it's become so regular and a bit detrimental, that's when it's we're recognizing it as a type of imposter syndrome. So we can all be a bit, but it's when it's regular and a lot of the time. So sorry, carry on.
No, that's all good.
Yeah.
So that's the first type. What's the second type of imposter syndrome?
So the second type is the Superman or Superwoman.
Okay.
So this is somebody that works really, really hard because they feel they have to compete with their real deal colleagues because they're not the real deal, they're a phoney. So working really, really hard. They tend to multitask. I kind of picture them, they're spinning all the plates to the point of over-exhaustion. They're always thinking about work. They sacrifice their downtime because they're always at work. They're the ones that stay late in the office day after day. Even, there are times, especially in high-pressure environments, where there's a lot of work to get done and you've got tight deadlines, and so it's necessary to work long hours, work at weekends. But it's when the days, the priorities have been achieved and they're still working, they're still going.
Okay.
They're just, overworking. It's almost like they need to prove themselves externally to people. It's that sense of approval externally. They take on too much. They have difficulty saying no, and they're people pleasers. So that's the typical kind of Superman, Superwoman. Now, to overcome that, it's really about finding self-validation. So it's self-acceptance. So it's internalizing your successes rather than always looking outside externally for that approval. If you're a Superman, Superwoman, imposter syndrome, you have got to get into the mindset that downtime is okay, it's needed, it's essential. Don't sacrifice it. And it's not just, 2 weeks a year, some weekends, daily downtime is needed.
Or I'm guessing, sorry to jump in, but I'm guessing also with that, it'll be making sure that the weekends are just for relaxation, doing things that you enjoy doing versus, I need to get my slide deck ready for next week, especially if there is no priority for that slide deck. It could just be a simple team meeting that you have on a weekly basis.
Yeah. I think that there needs to be a bit of balance because some people like to catch up at the weekends because it makes them feel less stressed. They feel like, I need to prep. So that it's okay, but don't not have your downtime as well. Because you need to replenish your energy to go again in the week. So that's important. Make sure you've got good mental resilience to be able to bounce back, to just watch the stress, because this type is very prone to burnout. When you're going at it all the time, you do need to have, just watch out for that. So enjoy your hobbies as well, because that's an important part of your fulfillment in life and your well-being,
and a part of your identity as well.
Exactly, like who you are. You're not just the person who's at work. So this one's really about boosting your self-esteem, your self-confidence, your self-validation, rather than looking externally to others. You don't need to be thinking about work and doing work 24/7 to be good at it.
Nice. Well, thank you very much, Dawn. That's also, see, I'm starting to see a pattern here, but I'm going to go back to that once we've gone through all the 5 different types. So we're going to move on to the third type of would you call it a pillar? Would you say it's a type of imposter syndrome?
I think it's a type, yeah.
Okay.
Imposter syndrome type, yeah.
Okay. What is the third type? Because, there seems to be definitely a lot of them.
Yes, there are. So this one is the natural genius. So this is where I think where somebody is actually gifted in a few things in their life. They're naturally gifted to, I don't know, play the piano, or they're good at sport. They're just one of those people that they just do it really, really well.
Yes.
Now, because of that, they feel that when they need to put in a lot of effort and a lot of time on something, it therefore must mean they're bad at it. And so there's an element of shame that comes when they have to do that. And shame is a heavy emotion to have. And also because of that, they're very reluctant to accept help.
Okay.
And it unfortunately means they avoid trying new things because they're so scared to fail or to not get it right the first time and not quickly, because they have had experience of just being great at something the first time or without effort.
Yes.
So they think that all of their life has got to be like that.
It should all just be plain sailing, no effort required. It should just be as simple as a duck to water.
Yeah, exactly, because they are in some areas. So they should be smart, they should be a fast learner, they should get it quickly. And they just feel that, you know, other people are high achievers and they're not so much, which, you know, is not true. So to overcome it, if you are a natural genius type of imposter syndrome, is to start to think in a way that the effort that I put in, equate that to my success. And this is really about going from a fixed mindset to a growth mindset. Have you heard of that?
Yes, I have heard of that, yes.
Yeah. So in terms of a fixed mindset is the talent and intellect I'm born with is what I'm born with. Whereas a growth mindset, the amount of effort, the amount of dedication and commitment that I put in, that can make develop my talent and my skills, and my brain can change over time. It's not just what I'm born with. So it's really adopting that growth mindset and to accept, you're not. This is where I think imposter syndrome has been misinterpreted. No one is meant to be a master at the start.
Yes.
It is about learning. Life is about learning along the way. So it's just like, don't expect to be gifted a natural genius at everything. We are all a work in progress.
Yeah, exactly. So, and I guess it's something that we have to, as you've mentioned before already in this recording, is that we have to understand that failure is not the end, and we shouldn't take it so. Yeah. It as much as it can be heavy, sometimes, or majority of the time in our mind, we exacerbate it, we expand it bigger than what it actually is. And to learn things, you have to fail to move forwards.
Absolutely, failing forward, yeah.
Exactly.
Learning to accept mistakes, they're learning opportunities.
Exactly.
It can be a hard lesson for some people, especially the natural genius. They struggle with that.
Excellent. Imposter syndrome type number 4. So Dawn, what is that exactly? So we've gone through 3 different types already. Yeah, again, completely new to me. So, and I can see where each part resonates. What is number 4?
So number 4 is called the rugged individualist. So I can picture this image of like someone very, muscly and strong, and they're in camouflage, and they don't ask for help, because if they do, it's going to expose them as a fraud, an imposter, and it's a sign of weakness. So they carry it all themselves, and they should already know anyway. They should already know this stuff. So if stop these types of people, it will stop them asking questions, because if they feel like they should already know the answer to that question, so they don't. So they might be in a meeting and go quiet because they don't want to put their hand up and ask a question because they're going to look stupid. So that's the rugged individualist. They tend to want more preparation time. They prefer to work alone than in groups. They want to do it all themselves, really. They're very independent people.
Yeah.
So how can we overcome this if you are a rugged individualist, someone that, a soloist, we could say as well. So it's getting into the mindset, if you ask for help, it is not a negative thing. It's about learning the skill of when to ask for help. Okay, you don't need to kind of struggle on alone. And actually, going back to that, I want to work independently, which is fine. A lot of people do work great. There's nothing wrong with that. But there are times when working in a group can be more effective, rather than maybe struggling on a particular thing alone and not wanting to ask for help because it's going to expose you as a fraud or an imposter. And it can be more efficient working in a group. So yeah, that's the rugged individualist.
Excellent. So, fifth and final imposter syndrome type.
So the fifth one and the last one is the expert. So these are people that want to be the expert, but they certainly don't feel it. So they have often been, maybe they've been in their job for quite a long time, but they never feel they're good enough. So these are the sort of people that, say there's an internal job promotion being advertised, or even if they're going for another job outside a company, and they don't go for it because they don't have every single skill and every single qualification and all of the experience that's displayed on that job description. So they're holding themselves back. They feel they need all of that to be the expert. And there's other people that will apply for that job promotion. They don't have all of those things, but the expert feels they need to have those things. And it can look a little bit like constant procrastination in the workplace, because they don't have enough experience, they don't have the skills, they don't have the qualifications. So even though they do have a lot of knowledge and a lot of qualifications, it's never enough. And it's not about having qualifications and learning. Of course, that's a great thing, but if it stops you and it makes you feel like you're not good enough, then obviously that's an unhelpful, it's not a useful thing. What they fear is being thought of and seen as inexperienced or not knowledgeable enough. So that's what they think. They always think there's someone better. So if you are someone who has got the expert type of imposter syndrome, it's having that need to recognise that skill gaps, it's normal. You're not expected to, be a library and know absolutely everything. Focus on the skills that you do have rather than what you don't have. Now, there might be times where you think, well, actually, I do need to have this qualification, or I do need to have that certain skill. But maybe approach it about, well, what is realistic and what's necessary skills to have. And maybe rather than researching and having qualifications that you just kind of hoard or you don't actually use, do a just in time. So I'll do this learn this skill, gain that qualification just in time for the need that is there, rather than it's unnecessary. Note your successes as well to help you focus on those rather than what you haven't got. What I always recommend to my clients is to keep an evidence journal. So literally a notebook, and record all the successes that you've had, so that when you have a wobble, you can go back to it and go, that's, I've got all these great things. It just lifts your confidence. So a really good thing that people can do to help with this is be a mentor to somebody. And I think being a mentor is very rewarding. From both sides, but that does help your confidence to think, this is what I do know, this is the skills that I have, and it's very valuable. So that's the last one, the expert. Now, there was one thing you mentioned in there about overcoming, and that was having a journal or noting down your successes. Now, what I found really, really good, because again, now that you've explained all 5 of them to us, I can see where there's a little bit of each one that resonates with me. I can say that for a fact. But specifically with this one, I always like to keep a positivity journal, for example, where I note the successes from each day. And I find that when it comes to imposter syndrome, or the elements of it that normally happen with me, that keeps me thinking in a positive state. Oh, you know what? Hold on. It actually was a successful day, despite this one really big issue that happened in the lab, which wasn't particularly my fault. So, no, definitely. That's
Thank you for...
good. And I think that the little things, we tend to recall the big things, but the little things add up. So I think if you're really acknowledging, I could be having imposter syndrome or something's holding me back, to do something like a positivity journal, and maybe even for 7 days on the trot, write down some positive, even if they're little things that have happened, because at the end of that week, you can review it and think, there was some good things there. So, and I think that applies to all of the types, how to overcome it. So that's a really good point.
Excellent. Well, there we have it. That's all 5 different types. So I guess with that, the next step would be a case study on myself, or just, really talking about my story involving imposter syndrome, which, you know what, I probably didn't see it as imposter syndrome to begin with, but I think after looking at the 5 different types and how enlightening all 5 different types they are, I possibly did have imposter syndrome at the start of my job here. So just so that the audience know, look straight into the camera, I came from an academic background, so Imperial College London, which highly academic in terms of the research group I was in. We had a lot of funding. We did a lot of work during the COVID-19 times. So during the pandemic, I was always in the lab, and essentially we became rock stars overnight. So in terms of the vaccine work, we were doing at Imperial and helping out with different elements of the vaccine vaccines when it came to other modalities with different companies and different academic institutes. We were all over it. And I guess with the success that garnered, in the newspapers or when people would meet me, they've seen me on the Imperial website, they'll come to me and say, "Oh, aren't you a postdoc?" And it makes you feel like you're quite high up there. You feel like you're king of the castle. You feel that in terms of your prestige, it's high. Came to this workplace, and obviously Resolution, amazing place to work in terms of our values, in terms of everything that we do here and the opportunities. But then the first thing I noticed working in the industry, 1 is pace, and 2, because we're with a lot of talented, successful individuals as well. Me being at Imperial for 8 years, or being in academia for 8 years, and now starting out in industry, I was no longer I won't say top dog, but I was no longer the person who knew everything that was going on in the lab. Now everything felt completely novel. And I guess, I don't know what, in terms of statistics, when it comes to those who've been in jobs for a long period of time and then move into a completely new industry or something that's linked but not completely linked, what are the statistics on that? I don't know. I'm sure you probably can enlighten me when it comes to that, but I felt like a fish out of water. And I came in with a lot of energy, and obviously love my job and everything, came with a lot of energy, but I was like, oh, this is very different. I've got a lot more freedom here and I'm not used to it. It's a completely different way of working when it comes to industry versus academia, because now you're dealing with a product that, yes, it's, in both sides of the coin, both lines of work, it was a product or a modality is going to help patients in clinic. But now you're dealing with an actual product that is going to be sold for profit eventually. You're now dealing with a company, it's a business. So with that idea, it just felt so different. It now felt that now I'm in the corporate world. I'm doing this, I'm doing that, I'm wearing so many different hats. And that led to overwhelm. Obviously spoke to my amazing line manager about it. It came to overwhelm, and then I started to learn different things, but I was thinking, but why do I not know not the correct way, but why is that my way is not the better way or the optimal way to work? So when it came to creating slide presentations, for example, very different in academia to how it is in industry, because now snappy. It's about getting your message across quickly but efficiently and simply. In academia, you can delve into the minutiae of everything, and you can have a full-blown conversation on small molecules or things that, okay, yes, it wouldn't be beneficial for the product, but you just have that understanding to try and understand everything. You can do that in industry, but we want to be moving things forward, and that's something that I felt that I struggled quite a lot with to begin with. And I'm like, hold on, but I'm just not getting it. And I felt with that, I was holding myself back because I dwell so much onto it.
So was that kind of like the implications, do you think, in the job here, that you were holding yourself back a bit because of those feelings? Yeah.
Yeah, definitely would say so, because then it will come to a meeting and I'm like, yeah, I know certain things to a certain level. I have my particular experiment or assay that I can focus on because I know it's mine. I'm the subject matter expert. I'm the SME on this. But when it comes to other things, well, I don't have industrial experience or cell and gene therapy experience. Let me leave that to other people. And essentially them began to think, well, okay, I don't have the experience. Does my voice truly matter in this? And then you hold yourself back. But after opening up about it with my line manager and having excellent camaraderie as well in terms of my team here, which is the AD team, we pinpointed the certain aspects where it's like, you know what, this can be worked further on, that can be worked a bit more on. I also came in with a very stubborn attitude as well. My way works. Or why am I going to change my way of working to fit a different area of expertise? But then obviously learn quite quickly, you have to be able to pivot in this line of work. And I think going through that and understanding that when it comes to industry, things are quite fast paced. You learn a lot quicker, but made some amazing connections within this workplace where we've openly discussed when it comes to the difficulties. Every single one of my colleagues, when we sit down and discuss, it's great. And then we have an amazing HR team as well who are willing to have those conversations with us and allow us to be vulnerable and open. And the same with the mental health committee.
I think that is the key, that you had the conversation, you had those discussions, you opened up. If you hadn't have done, I wonder where it would have led. We don't want it, to lead it, but it's simply by opening up, recognising it. It's really interesting what you say, because I think that for a lot of high achievers, when they've, maybe been through school and A-star students, you expect to do excellently well in academia, in your studies. It's not a feeling that you've had before that I don't know what I'm doing or I'm doing things differently. It's just it's an alien feeling and you're not used to it. So rather than, this is a different environment, this is new, and I'm not expected to know everything at the business. There are different ways of doing it. I'm now working in a group rather than maybe more insular. And then it's that, this is a bad thing, rather than this is expected, this is an opportunity for me to grow. So, but I think there's people where they've always excelled. They don't know a different sort of feeling, so it kind of hits them hard. So it's so interesting. Thank you for sharing your story. I'm really confident it would have resonated with a lot of people here. Definitely,
because a lot of people a lot of individuals, when it comes to resolution, in terms of the recruitment, a lot of people have come from academia. So I'm very sure, when I say come from academia, whether that's masters, whether that's bachelors, or whether that is PhD or postdoc, have come in from academia, and then it's, hold on, this is very, very different to what I realized. But no, definitely, it's been a journey. And it's been a journey to understand that, and I think now I can start to put the pieces together, especially with the resources and the information that you've elucidated and shown and explained to us as the audience about the different types of imposter syndrome. And I feel that there is an element of each one that can creep up, but it's just understanding that we can, when it comes to an individual, you can talk about it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's important to be able to be open about it.
Yeah, it's absolutely key. Being aware, talking about it, and then knowing it's so normal and there's nothing wrong with you, because it's one of the main causes coming from school, college, academia, further education into work, into a corporate world. That is one of the main causes. There's some other ones as well, where you change industry sector or you change company. That often is a spike in imposter syndrome. Or if you're returning to work after a career break, or coming back from maternity leave or a paternity leave, if you've got a long-term break for whatever reason, for health reasons or something, coming back into the workplace often can spark that imposter syndrome. When you get promoted to a bigger or a more senior role, that's a big cause for imposter syndrome. And the other one is when someone for the first time becomes a manager of people, so a team leader. So they might be absolutely brilliant at their sort of day-to-day job, but now suddenly they've been promoted and they've got a team to look after. And suddenly like, oh, I'm not good enough to do this, I don't know how to do this, they're going to find me out type of thing. And then while we're on causes, just massive overthinking. Just overthinking it as well. So all kind of, it's normal stuff that, you know, like I said, there's nothing wrong, and it's just acknowledging it. So
Excellent.
It's good to hear your story.
Thank you very much, Dawn. We've had an amazing chat today, Dawn. I feel that it's been very enlightening. It has highlighted a lot of things that I have seen within my colleagues. It's highlighted a lot of things I've seen within friends and family, as well as myself, when it comes to talking about imposter syndrome. So here is where we draw our conversation to a close. It's been a great fireside chat. What would you, in terms of overcoming, what would you like to summarize with, and what next?
Yeah, so I think that regardless of which of the 5 types you might be, kind of some things to overcome when you've got those feelings of imposter syndrome, or when it's striking its ugly head. Some things that you can do is certainly reframe it from something negative to positive. So seeing it as a positive thing rather than, oh, this is dragging me down, a negative thing. Because essentially, when you feel imposter syndrome, you're getting out of your comfort zone. And when you get out of your comfort zone, that's when the magic happens. When you stay in your comfort zone, you're not going to grow. You feel nice and cozy and comfortable, but you want to, you know, push yourself.
Yes, of course.
To if you know, if you're aspirational. So it's not a bad thing. So it's when you don't kind of recognise it and let it to fester, then it can, you know, then it's not good for your mental health. It's a real opportunity to grow and learn. But I don't know about you, but the term imposter syndrome to me sounds very negative.
Yes.
It's not, it doesn't make you feel good, does it? So I think just the terminology that we use, but we use imposter syndrome because we know what it, you know, we tend to know what it is, we know what we're talking about. But imposter, fraud, imposter doesn't sound great. Syndrome to me sounds like a medical disease, a medical
sounds
condition.
Like an illness. It sounds like
illness.
Exactly, something that's chronic.
Yeah, and it's not a recognising, it's certainly a mindset, a feeling, it's identity, but it's not a disease. But I really like Stephen Bartlett's take on it. You know Stephen Bartlett from...
Stoic.
Yeah, exactly, in Dragon's Den, and Soccer Aid at the weekend, if you saw that. He, when he first joined Dragon's Den, he felt like an imposter. So I think it was his first TV work, so he said, I literally, you know, turned up to the studio, I'm sitting there in the line of dragons, and I looked to my left, and there's Peter Jones, who's been there since episode 1, series 1, you know, older than me, wiser, more experienced, very successful. And I look to my right, and there's Deborah Meaden with all her facts and figures, again very experienced. And he goes, and then there's me, and I don't deserve to be here. Who am I to be on this TV show? But he said, well, actually, I do deserve to be here. I have got my place here, and this is actually a tremendous growth moment.
Yes,
so I'm
definitely
searching out these imposter syndrome type feelings because I know I'm growing at a pace. So actually, when you think of it as a tremendous growth moment, or tremendous growth moments, you have a different relationship to that term. It's more positive, isn't it? It's more empowering. So really reframing the feelings of imposter syndrome from negative to positive is an essential thing to do. The other things, how to overcome it, is really, it's time for self introspection, looking inward, looking at yourself, trying to really validate yourself, being kind, to kind of poke away and chip away at that imposter syndrome feelings. That's where the evidence journal, your positivity book would come in really helpful to do that, taking time to do that. Asking questions, ask away those insightful questions. It reminds me of a time when I started at a new job, new company, and I was the newbie sitting at a meeting, and I was asking all these questions because I could. I just joined the company, so it was fine. a year or so down the line, going to a similar meeting, I remember being quiet and not saying anything, because I thought, I should know this. If I ask that question, they're going to find out that I don't know, and I'm going to look silly. But it's it's a different way of thinking. Like, no, ask the question that probably everyone around the table wants to ask. So it's fine. Also check thoughts versus facts. So this is a mindset thing. So it could be that you have this thought that you don't deserve the job that you have, and that thought then impacts how you feel, which then impacts how you behave and your action. There's a cycle.
It's a loop.
So if you change your thought, you change your feeling, and you can change your action. So if you're like, I do deserve to be here, I am capable, and then that makes you feel more positive, empowering, then you will ask the questions and you will go for that project. So there's a loop there. And also we can go on a wild journey with our thoughts where it's something negative, but actually it's just somebody's opinion or their view or their perception or perspective. It's not necessarily a fact. Not all thoughts are facts. And again, that's where your positivity book is. Check for the facts rather than thoughts is a really good one to use. And just know that we are all a work in progress. So we are here to learn. So it's a good thing.
Exactly.
So embrace it.
Exactly. Really good words of wisdom, really great words of advice, which I think in terms of our resolutionaries and our colleagues definitely will benefit from going forwards, because at the end of the day, we don't know who is dealing with imposter syndrome. And again, as I've what I now understand from understanding the 5 different types is that there can be elements of all the 5 different types around, and it can happen at any time in life as well. And as you said, high achievers are resolutionaries. We are high achievers, and we're achieving many important things every day. So with that, there is the possibility there, but it's to have those conversations with your line managers, your colleagues. You will not be criticized for saying, this is how I've been feeling on this basis, and this has had an effect on my performance, and on top of that, I would like to find a way to overcome. So I think in terms of having this as a resource, that's something, that is definitely a resource that others can come to, as it's pre-recorded. It's amazing and great. So thank you very much for coming to 245 Hammersmith, giving me the opportunity this is the first time I've met you in person, having an opportunity to actually sit down and discuss imposter syndrome, as it's such an important thing when it comes to fast-paced work environment and when it comes to life.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I've loved our chat. It's been really, really good, really interesting. And it's great that you're doing this kind of thing, because it just helps make that open and safe environment for people to have the conversation. And that's just, the start of it. And I'm sure you'll get some people saying, well, I felt like that too, Leon, when I started here. So it's great.
As the mental health first aider, I look forward to having these conversations with those, obviously confidentially. And just, talking about my experience, and just really opening up and saying, look, I felt that way too as well. And then that's, at the end of the day, it benefits all of us.
So beneficial and helpful, so it's great.
Perfect.
Thanks, Leon.
Well, thank you very much, Dawn.
Thanks.
And hopefully the first of many.
Hope so. That'd be great.
Thank you.
Thanks.